Okay, looks like I have the top of the hour on my clock, so we are going to get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking time to be with me today. So the focus of our presentation today is going to be building on fire lanes and other types of emergency access roads using both flexible geocells and rigid porous paver systems. So I'm your host, Sam Justice, and I am a licensed professional engineer in Wisconsin and Kentucky, and I do have degrees in civil and geotechnical engineering. I'm one of the engineers here at Presto Geosystems, and we manufacture erosion control, stormwater management, and porous pavement products, all made in the upper Midwest of the United States. Through an extensive national and international distribution network, we offer both technical and site support, as well as free project evaluations from our in-house engineering team, like myself. So, quick learning objectives. Here are some of the things that I hope you get out of today's presentation. I want you to be able to understand the benefits of using a soil stabilization system for gravel and grass surface roads and parking areas, and know the difference between rigid and flexible porous pavement systems, and why you may choose one over the other, including weather conditions, frequency of use, and other project-specific conditions. And finally, understand how Presto Geosystems can help you include any of the products that we do offer in your bid packages, including supporting documentation that you may need. So first, a little bit of background on Presto Geosystems if you don't know who we are. So we've worked with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to develop the GeoCell technology. We did that in the late 1970s, and we've been innovating in the geosynthetics market ever since. Our products have been used in nearly 200 countries and in every state in the United States. And we go beyond simply providing a product, all with an eye for providing a complete solution for your specific project. So we do operate in three main product areas, the first being soil stabilization with our GEOWEB Geocells, which can be used for a couple different application types, including load support, slope and channel protection, and constructing green retaining walls. Then we also have our porous pavements, of which we have both a vegetated and a stone surface solution, and lightweight reusable construction mats. Today, we're going to touch on both the GEOWEB system for a load support application and the GEOPAVE and GEOBLOCK porous pavement units. If you have any questions about the other application types or products that we offer, feel free to reach out to me directly once the presentation is over. So let's start with the GEOWEB system and understand how the GEOWEB stabilization system can provide benefits for unpaved gravel surface roads and parking areas. So the GEOWEB system is our version of GeoCell technology, and it does consist of two main attributes. The first is going to be the cell or container size. The cells come in three diameters, small, medium, and large, and cell heights of 3, 4, 6, 8, and 12 inches, so 5 different options for the depth. And these dimensions are going to depend on your project details and your vehicle loading requirements. And we can help you determine which one is going to be the most appropriate for your specific job. There are also 5 section length options to choose from to best fit your project needs. So as you can imagine, there is no one size fits all, but we're going to help you determine the right product for your project. So something else to point out is going to be the ultrasonically welded seam, and that's where all of the connecting points are. And it's really important to the function of a geocell. The stronger the seam strength, the better the performance of the geocell. A strong seam allows for heavier infill materials and better lifetime performance. The GEOWEB panels are produced using a high-quality virgin, high-density polyethylene, HDPE resin, for consistently strong welds at every cell junction, while also maintaining semi-rigid ductile properties within the cell walls. Too stiff of a cell wall leads to overstressing of the seams and potential for cell rupture and project failure. Our geocells do not use any fillers or exotic polymer alloy blends, which can ultimately reduce that weld strength and other properties, such as the environmental stress crack resistance of the panels themselves. Having fillers or alloys is sometimes offered in the name in some of our competing products in the name of increasing cell wall stiffness. And so to avoid weld failures and the damaging effects of differential settlement, uniformity in performance across all elements of a geocell system is more important than a single function such as stiffness alone. So keep that in mind if you're seeing other geocell technology products on the market and they're really emphasizing one single property of their cells as opposed to a good uniform performance across the entire system. Definitely a red flag to keep an eye on. So the flexible GEOWEB system also offers the choice between the vegetated surface and a stone surface. You can use concrete as your infill material, but then you're going to have an impervious surface, and that's just not what we're talking about today. So know that it's an option, but we're not going to be covering it. So an important benefit of using the GEOWEB system is that even a low quality aggregate, a sand, or even salvaged materials from on-site can be used to fill the cells. Using salvaged aggregate or other granular materials can save significant amount of money on material and hauling costs. We can also have you eliminate the fines content when desired, since the cells provide containment and aid in the compaction of cohesionless materials. If you remove the fines, you can significantly improve the drainage and let water flow freely throughout the system, preventing pore pressure buildup and global failure across the cross-section. And it can be considered a truly porous pavement in that case. So the GEOWEB panels are made from a high stability inert material, that HDPE resin. So GEOWEB geocells are your permanent stabilization solution and are not going to degrade, leach, or release microplastics into the environment. And GEOWEB does not contain any intentionally added PFAS, those quote unquote forever chemicals. And based on this understanding, the GEOWEB system is not expected to pose a risk of release of PFAS compounds into your environment. So definitely something to consider if you are in an environmentally sensitive area. You don't have to worry about chemical or PFAS or microplastic release into your environment. And so like I said, the GEOWEB system is manufactured with no fillers, no polymer alloys, and no compatostabilizers. So our base resin is the same material used in other environmental applications, such as geomembranes or environmental barriers. And that's to protect against the spread of harmful toxins. And our products have been third-party tested by accredited geosynthetic laboratories, confirming long-term stability against environmental factors such as weathering and oxidation. The GEOWEB system is predicted to be durable for a minimum of 100 years in natural soil based on analysis in accordance with EN ISO 13438. And when subject to UV radiation and accelerated weathering conditions in accordance with EN 12224, the GEOWEB specimens retained 100% of their original tensile strength with no loss of mass or change in visual appearance. And so all that to say, it's not going to degrade, crack, break down in any condition in natural soil or when exposed to sunlight. So even if you have a bit of a high pH soil, or if you are having some chemicals, say you're in a detention pond, none of that is going to affect the GEOWEB system. It is going to be a strong, stable system for the entire lifetime of your project. And the GEOWEB system and all of our accessories are made 100% in the United States under strict quality assurance and environmental control processes. So they do meet the requirements for the Build America, Buy America grant program. So if you are working on federal projects or otherwise looking for some of that grant money, this is a great way to meet those requirements. You don't have to worry about them being manufactured overseas or anything like that. Okay, so I want to talk about a typical cross-section for a load support application using the GEOWEB system. So we start with your subbase. It can have pretty much any strength. Typically, we express it as the California bearing ratio percentage, your CBR. Then we decide if you're going to need some sort of geosynthetic material, typically a non-woven or a woven geotextile. And that's going to be based on your specific application need. Then, depending on how soft your subgrade is, you may need a subbase layer of granular material, especially if you're carrying very heavy loads or if you have very, very soft soils, that subbase layer is necessary. Not always. So if you don't need it, pretend it's not here. Then you're going to put the GEOWEB panels down, fill them in with whatever infill material you chose, whether that's going to be topsoil for vegetation, granular material, stone, salvage material, etc. And there you go, put the infill in. You can pave over it, so asphalt, concrete, roller compacted concrete, that sort of thing. Again, not what we're talking about today, but it's an option. It's good to know it's there. And then start driving on it. So really important to realize that this is a complete system. All these pieces do work together. And this is what it has the potential to look like. May not be exact for your specific application, but gives you a good idea. Okay, and then here you can see some of the stresses on the subgrade. So this is a really important picture to understand how the GeoCell system is really helping you in your application. So you can have the unsupported subgrade on the left and then the GEOWEB reinforced area on the right. And notice how there is a complete elimination of the highest stresses at the surface with the GEOWEB reinforcement. So the stresses are reduced and distributed over a wider area. And we call this the mattress effect. So the mattress effect reduces the stress reaching the subgrade and leads to a significant decrease in deflection and rutting. And the GEOWEB geocells can alter the geometry of the soil pressure bulb underneath an applied load through that mattress effect. So when a load is applied to a geocell reinforced layer, the lateral earth pressures develop within the infill material, which is confined laterally by the GEOWEB geocell walls against movement, in turn developing shear resistance along the wall interfaces through that interconnected network of cells. So in essence, this lateral confinement converts horizontal earth pressures into upward resisting shear forces. When combined with a suitable base reinforcement, such as a woven geotextile, it becomes possible to construct over very weak subgrade materials, including those with your standard penetration resistance, your SPTN values of less than 2 blows per foot, which is approximately a CBR of less than 0.5%. So very, very weak soils. And that is going to be where most planar geosynthetic products, such as geogrids, are otherwise going to fail. So the weaker the subgrade, the better performance you're going to have with the GeoCell system being included. Okay, let's talk about some case studies. Everybody likes to see how these things work in the real world. We've got 2 projects that we're going to look at for this one. So this was a project for Duke Energy down in Florida to install some new transmission towers through a wetland environment. So the high winds from Hurricane Michael had demolished over 100 towers, all of which had to be restored over this extremely soft subgrade. You can see in the photo how easily just people walking were indenting their footprints. So imagine trying to carry heavy construction vehicles or transmission maintenance vehicles across this. You can see the ruts, the water's ponding at the surface, just not a good environment. And so that access road did have to be able to support that heavy construction equipment during the install and heavy maintenance and repair equipment for 20 plus years along the entire route of all of these transmission towers. So this was a saturated sand environment, and it really couldn't support any type of vehicle load. So for our solution, we came up with an enhanced woven geotextile placed over that subgrade. And this was to create both an additional strength layer within the system, but also to give some filtration to still allow water flow through the system, but not allow that sandy soil to migrate up to the surface of your new aggregate road, because that could foul the system and cause some potential issues down the line. So the GEOWEB panels were filled with a low quality aggregate. It had been locally sourced and was easy to transport to these remote locations. So they didn't need a high quality engineered stone. They were able to use basically spoils from another location that had been nearby. And that's a great aspect of the flexible GEOWEB system, is to be able to use those low quality salvaged materials. And then once those panels are filled in, both wheeled and tracked equipment can easily drive over this type of system. even when that infill material is sand or that low quality stone, which would normally be horrible to try and drive tracked vehicles over. So you can see how the GEOWEB panels can act as their own access road. Nice little benefit there. So basically you just keep filling up the panels in front of you and driving on them behind. So you don't need to build up additional temporary roads during the installation process. So now this access road can carry the equipment along the entire length of these remote towers, and it's going to be in place for as long as the project lifetime needs to be. Okay, our other project, this is a case study showing how the GEOWEB load support system can be used to protect a wetlands area while meeting stormwater regulations for the amount of runoff potential into the surrounding environment. So this is an environmentally sensitive area, so minimizing the impact both during construction and the overall lifetime impact of the road is going to be really important. Using an open graded stone allows for free water movement through the GEOWEB system so that the water cycle in the area is not disturbed. And additionally, this was a state park, so lots of visitors are going to be walking and driving around, which means that the park had to have a requirement to allow for emergency vehicle access to all locations within the visitor areas, including ambulances and fire trucks. So here is that open graded aggregate going into the cells, and you can see they chose to use a filter fabric underneath the GEOWEB panels. This was both used as a separation layer to prevent contamination of the wetlands, but also to add some additional strength to the system to help carry those heavy vehicle loads on these access paths. In general, these were going to be just walking trails for visitors, and so that's really what they look like. They just look like gravel pathways. But the ability to carry those vehicle loads, the park was able to minimize their impact on the environment by not needing paved roads alongside of these for their emergency access. And it is important that emergency vehicles have a clear idea of where they can drive so that during their emergency, they're not getting lost or driving where they aren't supposed to. Especially in a wetland environment, driving off the road could potentially lead to the fire truck or ambulance getting caught and bogged down, which could be potentially disastrous when every second counts. Presto Geosystems has been installing these types of applications in a wide variety of site conditions for decades. So we are able to help provide recommendations for your cross-section, your infill materials, installation advice, and we can even help talking with your local regulators or fire marshals to help meet your requirements for stormwater management and emergency vehicle access. And then here's what that product looked like. A couple months after installation, you can see the vegetation has started growing back in alongside. So this is now a low maintenance emergency access road that is used daily by pedestrians and passenger cars, and hopefully infrequently by. Hello, can anyone? Oh, I'm seeing that people got me back. I do apologize. It does sound like seem like my sound cut out for a minute there. I apologize for anyone. Thank you everyone in the chat for letting me know that my sound cut out so I didn't just keep talking. So we are going to go back to the start of this slide just in case. So something that I want to point out is that the GEOWEB system can supplement the existing roads by creating those porous road shoulders alongside asphalt or concrete paved roads. So if you are limited on how wide your hard surface pavements can be, this is a great way to allow shoulders that can support all highway rated vehicle loads. This allows for cars to pull over so as not to block the road. It also allows police or ambulances to drive on your road shoulders around traffic, and generally is going to make your roadways safer. The GEOWEB cells are filled with stone or a stone and grass mix, which can create a green road shoulder. So both infill types help manage stormwater runoff from your impervious asphalt pavements by allowing your stormwater to infiltrate and reducing erosion concerns along your pavement edges. So this is definitely something that we see a lot. It's a great application. If you do have any specific questions about how to integrate it next to an existing hard surface road, feel free to reach out and we will be happy to talk about it. Okay, so that was the flexible GEOWEB system. The other option that we do have is a rigid paver option. So the flexible option with the GEOWEB system does have some great benefits, especially if you're working in very soft soil conditions, if you have those extremely heavy construction vehicle access needs, or if you are going to be using those salvaged materials, those low quality aggregates. But we do have our other option of porous pavements. The rigid paver units are great for parking lots, access roads, and similar needs. This is usually going to be the better option if you do have competent soils on site and are sticking with highway rated vehicles only. So if you're not in those soft soil environments where it's really mucky, where you have a high water table, that sort of thing, using the rigid option is actually going to be probably your better choice. So we do have two different surface types that can be used for our rigid porous pavement systems. You can do topsoil with vegetation or gravel for a stone surface. With the rigid porous pavement systems, you can use either option. It's really up to you to decide what is the best for your site. And the biggest difference between the two, besides how they look, obviously, is going to be the amount of vehicle traffic that they're able to withstand. With the vegetated system with a grass surface, vehicle traffic should be occasional. Think only a few times a week. This is because no matter how great a system is, grass just doesn't like to be driven on. Too much time getting crushed under cars is going to kill the grass off. The system is still going to work, no issues there, it'll support the vehicles, but you won't have that nice green lawn that you might have been hoping for. So if the pavement is planning on seeing daily use, a stone infill is the way to go. We call this a non-bound aggregate because there are no glues or resins, asphalt binders, anything like that. Nothing is needed to hold the stone together, just the paver unit itself. So there are two different paver options depending on the infill that you choose. The first is going to be the vegetated system, and we call that GEOBLOCK. And so I understand that a lot of our names are pretty similar. You have the flexible GEOWEB system and then the rigid GEOBLOCK system, which has vegetation. I'm going to try and make sure that I emphasize which one I'm talking about at any time. So the vegetated GEOBLOCK system is a rigid system, meaning that the panels are not meant to bend or twist. And that rigid nature means that a thinner cross section is going to be possible and is going to be a stronger system compared to ones that are made strictly from geotextiles or from traditional pavements that have been turned porous, such as porous concrete or porous asphalt. So an important aspect of the GEOBLOCK vegetated units is that they have a large amount of open space at the bottom of each cell, which allows for full root penetration. So the grass surface is thick and uniform. So once the cells are filled in with topsoil and then allow that grass to grow, you're not going to actually see any of the plastic material. You won't see these cell walls. So you don't have a visible roadway structure. And then the paver unit is going to protect the root zone from compaction so the grass can withstand being driven on occasionally. The other option that we have is the aggregate filled option. It's called GEOPAVE. So again, there might be some confusion with names, so I'm going to try and emphasize which one I'm talking about. So the GEOPAVE aggregate units are similar to the GEOBLOCK vegetated units with those same rigid paver characteristics, but it does have some specific features needed for the performance with a stone infill. The main difference that I want to highlight is going to be the monolithic mesh bottom, and you can see that in the photo here. It's a molded in-place mesh on the underside of the paver units, rather than the large opening that we saw with the GEOBLOCK vegetated units. And this mesh helps keep the stone infill from migrating underneath the unit, and the integrated nature assists in the overall rigidity of the paver system. So this mesh lattice bottom spreads the load similar to the mattress effect that we talked about with the flexible GEOWEB system, so that the vehicle loads don't create ruts due to the high volume of cars. So these units are designed specifically to work with the different types of infill materials, GEOBLOCK with topsoil and grass, and GEOPAVE with stone, to create the best possible pavement sections for your need. And there are some really good benefits to using a rigid porous paver system for emergency access areas. And our paver units are uniquely created to serve this need. So the cell walls of the GEOPAVE stone unit are meant to be visible, and they're designed with a herringbone pattern similar to a paver stone aesthetic. Additionally, that stone infill color can be varied to create a sense of separation, useful for walkways, parking lots, and road shoulders. And then the GeoBlock vegetated units allow for that full vegetation growth with a natural look, with the cell walls not visible through the grass. If you go back to the flexible GEOWEB system, it also is going to be fully covered so you don't see any of the plastic material. So definitely something to keep in mind for the aesthetics of your project. But basically, whatever look you're going for on your site, you can achieve with one of our products without the unfinished look that is common with porous concrete and porous asphalt. A wellness retreat in Door County in northern Wisconsin used the GeoPave stone system to help achieve LEED Gold certification on their site, due in part to the stormwater storage utilized within the GeoPave system. And an office building down in Florida used the GeoBlock vegetated system for their fire access lane while still looking like a normal lawn area. Another benefit for both the rigid and flexible paver units is that they align well with existing asphalt or other traditional pavements. Here you can see a car dealership parking lot addition in Brooklyn, New York. The paver units come in rectangles, but they can be field cut to handle curves, existing structures such as manholes, and other obstacles that are common on site. The aggregate GeoPave and vegetated GeoBlock units or the flexible GeoWeb panels work in concert with hard surface pavements and are considered porous enough that they can handle sheet runoff from those adjacent impervious parking areas. So this is a great way to add stormwater or add additional parking spaces while still meeting stormwater requirements at your site, with no need to create more stormwater infrastructure such as drainage swales or ponds. One of the functions of a porous pavement system, both the rigid and the flexible systems, is to reduce the stress that is transferred to the soil by vehicle traffic. We talked about that back in the beginning. We saw it with the mattress effect and how it distributes that soil pressure bulb. So a great application for these products is to use them as tree root protection. This was a hotel in southern Illinois that used the GeoPave system with stone. By laying these systems over buried tree roots as close to the tree trunks as possible, you can reduce the stress that puts pressure on the roots, potentially damaging or killing those trees. So if you do have trees that need to stay in place, these systems are a great way to get your vehicle access roads, such as this driveway, while keeping your existing vegetation in place. And reducing a site's overall environmental impact can help you meet your green infrastructure, low impact development, or green building goals for building in protected or densely populated areas. It can help you meet stormwater requirements that limit the amount of hard surface you have in your landscaping plans, which is becoming increasingly common in cities and townships. And this is also something that we have a lot of experience in all across the US and are absolutely willing to help you achieve for your specific projects. We're going to help you work with regulators and show how you can meet those stormwater and environmental conditions. So let's take a little bit of a closer look. We'll start with the GeoPave aggregate system. The biggest factor in determining whether or not a base layer is required underneath the GeoPave system is going to be that strength of your soil, the CBR of the soil. The higher the ratio, the stronger the soil. And the strength of the GeoPave system is that even for the highest load rating from AASHTO, HS25 loading, which is going to be your very heavy fire trucks and emergency vehicles, basically anything that is highway rated without special requirements, you're going to have a really low base depth, 6 inches or less, compared with a 14 plus cross section if you were to go with geotextile based systems alone. And it's important to note that the table shows the minimum depth requirements, and you can always add more base if you want some additional stormwater storage. So something else that you may hear or see out on the market marketing themselves as porous pavements are geotextile paver systems. They're considered a rolled system because they do come rolled up like a fabric, but they do have a lot of problems due to not having common cell walls or by allowing the stone infill to get underneath the system, causing uplift, which you can see in the big photo there. Both these issues are addressed in the design of the GEOPAVE aggregate system with its rigid cell walls and that integrated mesh bottom. And just be aware that just because a system says that it allows for stormwater infiltration doesn't mean that it's going to be appropriate for your project. Make sure you look at all of the details. We have a quick case study for the GEOPAVE system as well. This was actually in Oklahoma at the Oklahoma Zoo, and they needed some emergency vehicle access. So the zoo used aggregate walking trails throughout the area and wanted to keep that aesthetic, even in areas where additional support was needed for ambulance and fire trucks. Standard aggregate paths with compacted but unconfined stone tend to rut and have ponding at the surface. And local regulations said that the zoo needed constant maintenance of these paths in order to allow for that emergency vehicle access. So the zoo reached out to us for a solution that could reduce their maintenance needs and support the heavy vehicles as required by the city. So the zoo chose the GEOPAVE aggregate system to blend in with their existing pathways. The GeoPave panels are easily field cut to handle those curves and go around manholes, and then join up with existing pavements around buildings. And because the site had competent soils, strong enough to walk on and not overly saturated, there wasn't actually a base layer required underneath the GeoPave units. So excavation was very minimal, which was a great benefit for the zoo as well. And then here are a couple of those emergency roads after getting filled in with their stone. In this case, the zoo chose to slightly overfill the panels so that the plastic material was not visible. That's absolutely fine. It's not going to impede the water flow or the ability for those heavy fire trucks or ambulances to drive over the system. And again, a clear roadway is visible for the first responders to use. Local regulations for the area were met, including a sign-off by the local fire marshal, and the zoo had their low maintenance, long-term solution. So win-win for everyone. So now we're going to focus in on the GeoBlock vegetated porous pavement system. So again, that is that vegetated surface. It's going to be a really popular choice for emergency vehicle access applications because it allows for those emergency roads to blend in with their surroundings. So very similar table to what we saw before based on the soil strength expressed as your CBR. There are two different options for the GeoBlock system. One's a little thicker, one's a little thinner. We can help you determine which one is going to be the most appropriate for you. And there are, again, these rolled porous pavement options out there on the market. This just it hurts my poor engineering heart looking at this because you can see that it's not working. It's still allowing for rutting and ponding at the surface. They warp very easily due to vehicle loads, so those ruts are just going to keep getting deeper. And really the worst part for the vegetated systems is that you're not allowed to use topsoil as the infill. You actually have to use sand because the sand is what's providing the strength to support your vehicle loads. And we can all imagine how poorly grass grows in pure sand without any nutrients. So you're going to get that yellow, dying, straw-like grass. So really, there's just no benefits to using this. And it's not just coming from the manufacturer of these products. It is coming from an engineering perspective of these products are just not providing a long-term viable solution. Okay, a couple more case studies. See how these work. The first is going to be a fire access lane for a hospital campus in Missouri. The hospital had lots of green space around all of their buildings that they wanted to keep, but they still had to meet local requirements for allowing fire truck access to the rear of buildings. So they chose to use the GeoBlock vegetated system to keep that green space alive. The grass would survive because, again, hopefully there wouldn't be a frequent need for fire trucks to drive over the grass. and it wouldn't look like a road or a parking area, so hospital visitors wouldn't drive on it. Concrete curbs and conspicuous landscaping elements were designed for the fire lane so that first responders could understand where they were allowed to drive. And so this is what the GeoBlock system looks like immediately after installation. So they've been filled in with a nutrient-rich topsoil or a growing medium, that sort of thing. You could also place sod directly in these panels if you want to go that route. And so the panels are actually usable right now, even without that grass growth. You can start driving on them right away if you need to. You can wait for the grass to grow, over time. So especially if you are doing some sort of winter construction, trying to get in during non-growing seasons, this is a great way to do that because you don't need that grass to grow before starting to use it. And then here's what the site looks like after the grass has grown in. The plastic material of the GeoBlock panels is not visible, and the grass blends pretty well with the surrounding areas. In this case, it is still kind of an obvious road thanks to that concrete curb, but it's definitely better than an asphalt surface road. And the fire lane grass can be maintained the same as the rest of the landscaping elements. Mow it when needed. You can use a riding or walk-behind lawnmower. Fertilized as needed. You're not going to have any concerns about damaging the system with fertilizer. It's a low maintenance solution with a lovely green aesthetic to meet both your emergency regulations and your green building goals. So this was another project. This was a new build residential area with a large pond surrounded by houses. Due to the way the neighborhood was set up, there were no asphalt or concrete roads between the pond and the houses. But because it was designated as a recreational area, there needed to be fire and emergency access all the way around the water. So in order to maintain that anticipated green space, the GeoBlock system was used. So the panels are easy to install, even for a novice crew, and with a strong subgrade, excavation is minimal, speeding up your installation time. The panels fit together to provide that full coverage needed to create a solid roadway for the heavy fire trucks and ambulances. And one of the benefits of using a porous pavement system like this is that the water infiltrates freely. So there's no ponding at the surface or excess runoff that you might get from an asphalt surface. So there's little risk of erosion or contamination from the fire lane into the pond or groundwater. And the panels help prevent tires from tearing up the grass, which leads to mud pits and dead zones. So that type of maintenance is virtually eliminated with the GeoBlock system. And you can see in this photo how the panels are cut to fit around the manhole system that was put in place. So if there are any utilities near or under the panels, it's actually pretty easy to just remove that section for utility repair and then place in a new GeoBlock panel so that you don't disrupt that coverage. And again, fill the cells with topsoil and grass seed that's going to grow in your area. The type of grass is not important to the function of the system. It's more important to know that it's going to grow in your local climate and blend with the nature around it. And then here we go. The grass is fully grown in and it's looking pretty good. So now this is a fully ADA accessible area, so you can walk on it, use a wheelchair, crutches, anything like that. Children can play on this area, all that good stuff. Plus, it allows for that fire truck and ambulance should the need arise. You can water the grass, you can install a sprinkler or irrigation system, or just let Mother Nature do her thing. And I do want to say, in terms of winter maintenance, these products have been used in very cold weather environments, including northern Canada, northern Europe, that sort of thing, including high altitude environments. So it can definitely be used in cold weather environments as well. If you do need to snow plow, typically we don't see snow plowing over grassed areas. It's usually only over the stone area, but you can plow over the grass as well. And really the only requirement for that is that you either include a rubber plow blade boot or slightly lift up the plow blade so it doesn't come in direct contact with the paver units themselves, because that direct contact from a sharp plow blade could potentially damage the units. If that does happen, you just do a quick replace of the areas that got damaged, but obviously we want to try and avoid that. So just want to maintain that slight separation between the plow blade and the paver units. You're also going to want to try and avoid including chemical de-icers or salt de-icers because these are freely infiltrating units. So if you do put salt over them, that salt is going to migrate down into your groundwater system. Same with chemical de-icers. It's going to kill your grass, potentially contaminate your groundwater system, depending on what you use. So that sort of nasty stuff, you kind of just want to avoid that. But we definitely have put these in cold weather environments, snowy, icy environments. We have more information about this on our website, or feel free to reach out to me directly and I would be happy to discuss it. And it's something that we can discuss with your local regulators. I know that it is definitely a concern for people who've never seen this type of technology before. I also wanted to highlight a couple other notable locations where these types of products have been used, both for parking areas and for emergency access. First off, Congress, or at least the lawn in front of the Congressional building. So this was a popular spot for news vans and reporters to park to get a good view of things, and the vans were tearing up that grass anytime there was rain. So the GeoBlock panels were placed in this area to help reinforce the space and reduce the need for the amount of maintenance that might be required. So now vans park here all the time without issue. And it's been about 16 years since the install, and no significant maintenance has been reported on site. And the system was also used on the National Mall for emergency vehicle access. So the green medians between the sidewalks and the streets were all lined with the GeoBlock system and then fully vegetated so that you couldn't see the plastic material. The chains typically keep vehicles and most people off of these areas, but when needed, those chains are let down and the fire trucks, the ambulances can go straight down the middle without having to worry about trees or pedestrians or pretty much anything getting in their way. Another location, maybe you recognize this one, Stonehenge. I did say we were international. So the GeoBlock system is placed at Stonehenge as a parking area for buses and then as the emergency access lanes further into the park for ambulances. So the low impact invisible nature of the GeoBlock system was vital for this project to try and keep the area as wild and pristine as possible. But it's pretty cool that we're helping maintain a World Heritage Site. And speaking of World Heritage Sites, the last location I want to point out, the GeoBlock system is in place at Machu Picchu. It is used as the ADA accessible walkways throughout the park. In this case, they chose a slightly different colored grass to help designate those walking areas. Obviously, these paths are not wide enough for vehicles, but it can be just as important to allow for first responders to be able to walk to any areas that are needed. So while it is great that these can support those really heavy vehicle loads, it is just as important that people on foot be able to get where they need to go. Okay, and that's my presentation. That's what I've got for you. So we covered the flexible GEOWEB system and then the rigid GEOPAVE aggregate and GeoBlock vegetated systems. We talked about how they can support those very heavy vehicle loads, including fire trucks, ambulances, construction equipment, and utility vehicles. There's a lot of really great benefits to choosing a porous pavement for these types of applications, and we are happy to work with you to talk with regulators, fire marshals, and any other interested parties to try and get these types of products and applications approved. So part of our complete solution that we offer is our technical assistance. So we do provide free project evaluations. And so the form is on our website at prestogeo.com. You fill it out with as much information as you have, including attaching documents such as geotechnical reports and site photos. And it comes to myself and the rest of the internal engineering team here. And then for all of the projects using the GEOWEB system, we do follow the AASHTO method. And then with the GeoBlock and GeoPave, we have some independent third-party research that has shown us how it can be applicable and compared to other types of roadways. So we have that application method. And then within just a few business days, we provide a complete evaluation. It's going to include anchorage requirements, if any. We're going to say geotextile recommendations. You're going to get CAD details that can be included in your plans, specifying documents, supporting research as necessary, anything that you may need to help specify and include these products in your final designs. So I also want to introduce a new web-based software that we have. It's Presto GeoP3, where you can plan projects yourself within this portal, including all of the applications that we talked about today, including using the GEOWEB flexible system, the GEOPAVE aggregate system, and the GEOBLOCK vegetated system. And it is a software that offers a suite of geotechnical calculation tools designed to support engineers, contractors, and project owners in completing value engineering evaluations using all of our different products. So you can check the software out at prestogeop3.com. There's lots of great information in there, including a comprehensive resource library. But if you do have any questions, or if you want just a quick review of any projects that you put through there, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to discuss. And so we do deliver quality and over 40 years of expertise, guaranteeing each shipment meets or exceeds our specifications so that you can deliver certainty and build with materials that you can trust. No disclaimers, no concerning fine print. And that's my presentation. So thank you so much, everybody, for attending. I do want to remind you that you can always send questions to us at any time, either myself directly, my contact info is on the screen, or you can go through our website. A little bit of housekeeping before we get to the Q&A session, and it's going to be about your PDH certificates. So we do have the live presentation through GoToWebinar, and so if you attend live today, you will get an email from GoToWebinar by the end of today with a link to download your PDH certificate. If you're watching on demand, we have our webinar dashboard where you can easily view our library of webinars and download the PDH certificates for on-demand webinars that you've completed. So your webinar dashboard will keep a record of any webinars that you've watched along with your PDH credits earned. And so in 2 to 3 days from this live webinar, you're going to receive an email from Presto Geosystems with more information about accessing that webinar dashboard along with other helpful resources, including a PDF copy of today's presentation. So 2 potential emails that you're going to receive. By the end of today, from GoToWebinar, a link to download your PDH certificate. By the end of the week, an email from Presto Geosystems about accessing the webinar dashboard and additional resources. As always, if you don't receive these emails, check your spam folders. They get caught up pretty frequently in firewalls. So keep that in mind. We have a little bit of extra time here today and lots of great questions. So I'm going to go through and see what we have. The questions are going to be included in the recorded presentation that will be on the webinar dashboard. So if you do need to get back to the rest of your day, I fully understand. Feel free to check back in on the dashboard in a couple days and you'll be able to get this Q&A session. So let's see, lots of questions about cold weather environments. I know I touched on it really briefly at the end, but I understand it is a big concern for a lot of people. How do you handle snowy environments, ice buildup, all of that sort of thing, snow plowing, basic maintenance? And so the key is that, yes, you can use these in cold weather environments. We definitely have all over the world, and we can help you with those. In terms of snow plowing, you can shovel, you can use a snow blower, or you can use a plow blade, behind a truck or a car or whatever. And the key is don't allow there to be direct contact between that plow blade and any of the products, because that is going to potentially cause damage to the paver systems that would need to be replaced. You absolutely can do that replacement. It's not the end of the world if you do have that contact, but try and avoid it. It just creates a little bit of extra hassle. And then avoid salts and chemical de-icers, because those are going to potentially leach into your groundwater system. So if you do have questions, we have lots of specifics. We have a frequently asked questions page on our website that I encourage you to look at, or feel free to reach out to me directly. This is also something where if your local regulators are giving you pushback on including a porous pavement system, have them reach out to me, include my contact information. I've done this type of phone call very frequently. We're happy to talk about it. Ease some of those fears, make sure all of your regulations are met, give you the little check mark sign off so that you can keep moving forward. Some other questions. What is the maximum slope for these types of driveways, access roads, fire lanes? That's a great question. So the maximum slope is around a 3 to 1, a 3 horizontal to 1 vertical. That makes it about 18 degrees. And that's where you aren't going to need any type of anchorage. You're not going to need to stake it into the ground or whatever. Gravity is going to hold it in place. Definitely feel free to reach out to us to confirm that for your specific project if you are having some of those fears. If you're going, oh, I don't know, I've got a 20% grade, what do I need to do? That's something that we can help you determine what type of anchorage needs might be required, especially based on your vehicle loads. Obviously, the heavier vehicle load you have, the more potential for anchorage you might need. So definitely feel free to reach out to us, but there is a lot of leeway with the slope. These are not intended to be flat only. So great question. What about some recycled materials? So I mentioned a number of times with the flexible GEOWEB system, they are made of virgin HDPE material, and that's really important to the manufacture of a geocell. You're not really going to find any geocells anywhere that are manufactured using recycled materials because it just wreaks havoc on the manufacturing process. But the GEOBLOCK and GEOPAVE panels themselves do use recycled materials. They are also made of high-density polyethylene, so you have those same inert, chemically stable, no microplastics, no PFAS qualities to them, but they are made with those recycled plastics, so it gives you a little bit of extra peace of mind. With that, helps with some LEED credits, I'm told, to use those recycled materials. So if you are interested in that aspect of the manufacturing process, again, that's something that we can talk about and see what we can offer to have you include those in your bid packages. Let's see, there's the section where I lost sound. I do apologize for that, everyone. So some other questions that I'm seeing is, what is the lifetime of these products for these projects? And that's a great question. So all of the testing that we've done, both internally and with third-party testing, shows that using high-density polyethylene gives us multi-decade product lifetimes. Up to 100 years is what we've seen in testing with accelerated weathering, oxidation, UV radiation testing. So we have sort of a minimal minimal 100 years for that sort of thing. But typically, it's going to last as long as your project lifetime needs. We've been doing this since, like I said, the late 1970s, and we haven't seen any projects fail due to product degradation. They are really stable, really inert products that are going to last. So really, your standard project lifetimes of 20, 25 years, no problem. We've put warranties out for greater than that as well. So that is something that we can also offer, our long-term product warranties. Let's see, some questions about how do you mark roadways, especially with the GEOBLOCK vegetated system, where you're kind of trying to camouflage that it's a roadway. You don't want a lot of people driving on that. How do you make sure first responders, your fire truck drivers, ambulance drivers, all those good folk can figure out where they're supposed to go? And so that is going to be a question of aesthetics. It's going to be something that you determine is going to be most appropriate for your site. We've seen things as minimal as just signage near where the start of the road is going to be and say this is fire truck access or emergency vehicle access. Sometimes people will put ropes or chain over that area that would prevent your standard vehicles from driving there, and then when you do have the emergency, you take down the chains, and then the fire trucks can go through. And then you can also have things such as visible curbing elements. There was the project at the hospital campus that had a concrete curb, and that really helped highlight where that road was going to be. You can also go with some really conspicuous landscaping elements, build up trees, large bushes and shrubs along the sides of the roads, and that will help sort of guide and highlight where the drive lanes are, even when they're the grass or the plastic material is hidden. With stone infill, it's usually a bit more obvious where to drive. But yeah, so it is going to be project dependent. It is how obvious or not you want those barriers to be. But yeah, you're going to have signage, you're going to have some sort of maybe ropes or chains near the entrance, some barriers or bollards that maybe highlight where the entrance to those roads are, and then some sort of curbing element can help as well. Let's see, there are, what kind of stone do we recommend for both the flexible GEOWEB system and the rigid GEOPAVE aggregate system? And so the type of stone is not super important. You can go with limestone, you can go granite, you can do recycled concrete, you can do spoil material, so those salvaged materials if you've got spoils from some sort of excavation somewhere else. So the type of stone isn't super important. The size is going to be more important, the size and the gradation. And that is going to depend on your project specifics, what those sizes are going to be. Typically, we're going to recommend 3/4 to the 3/4 inch stone in the GEOPAVE aggregate unit, just because it's a little bit thinner, a little bit smaller, so you need that smaller stone. And then in the GEOPAVE flexible system, you can go a little bit larger on your stone size. You could go 1.5 to 2 inch size stone. But that is something that we provide in our project evaluations, is we do give the stone size or the gradation requirements that we recommend. So great question. Looks like we have time for one more question. Let's see, I want to talk about, using the systems for wheeled and tracked equipment. So all three products, GEOWEB, the flexible system, and then GEOPAVE aggregate and GEOBLOCK vegetated, can all support both wheeled and tracked equipment. And so basically, that's just a function of how the systems work, is that they're able to support those different types of vehicle loads. You are going to want to try and minimize the amount of direct contact between the tracks and the plastic material, just because those tracks really can get in and tear up that plastic. So maybe overfill the stone a little bit, so you have a little bit of a barrier between the plastic and the actual tracks themselves. Wheeled vehicles, not really a problem. You can go passenger cars all the way up to the heaviest highway rated vehicles, and then more than that, the heavy construction equipment, maintaining utility equipment, that sort of thing. We've walked cranes across all of these type of products. So it can handle very heavy loads. It can handle those tracks and those wheels. So there's not really much of a concern with that. In terms of what you may need under the products, if you need some sort of sub-base layer, that is going to depend on your subgrade strength. So if you do have that really weak soil, if it's something that is really soft and mucky and you're just sinking in and creating ruts, you are going to need some sort of sub-base layer to help support that, wheeled or tracked. But if you do have a more competent soil, if it's strong, if you have good infiltration, that sort of thing, you may not need a sub-base. And that's something, again, we can help with. I know I say that a lot, but it is, there's no one size fits all. These are very project specific, input dependent systems. But yes, you potentially need a sub-base, especially if very weak soil. Maybe not if you've got that stronger soil. So great questions. If I didn't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to discuss more. Or if you have any projects that you think one of these products might be applicable for, I'd be happy to discuss that as well. We can start really high level. We don't need to get into great detail right away if you don't have that, if you're just sort of curious. But I have gone over my time. Thank you, everyone who has stayed with me. I really appreciate it. I apologize for that little technical difficulty in the middle, but I'm glad we got back on track. And I hope to see you all in the future. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.